Hello and welcome to the Poetry Book Society showcase at Durham Book Festival. I'm Alice Kate Mullen and it's a pleasure to introduce three international stars today. The Poetry Book Society was founded by T.S. Eliot in 1953 to share the joy of poetry. Every quarter, our expert selectors choose the very best new poetry books to deliver to our members across the globe. Our three poets today are united by their deep exploration of being and belonging. Our first reader, Kazim Ali, was born in England and grew up transnationally in the US, Canada, India, France, and the Middle East. He is now a professor of literature at the University of California and joins us from San Diego. His latest collection, The Voice of Sheila Chandra, centers around a singer who lost her voice in a rare neurological disorder. Kazim's poetry takes us to this edge of knowing, to the very place where a voice breaks, where a song begins and ends. This voicelessness becomes a meditation on his own life as a gay Muslim immigrant living in the US. In a world governed by storm and noise, he tells us, silence speaks volumes. A fellow transnational, Nidhi Zak, Aria Eipe, was born in India and grew up in the Middle East, Europe and North America before settling in Ireland. She won a Next Generation Artist Award and is poetry editor at Skein Press. Her astonishing debut, Auguries of a Minor God, invokes Karma, the Hindu god of love and desire. Like Kazim, Nidhi too takes us to the edges of language, to the unquiet and pre-vocal. Her final poem, A is for Arabs, is an exhilarating tour de force, an incantatory epic for our modern age of migration. Our last reader, Hannah Lowe, was born in Ilford to an English mother and Jamaican Chinese father. Her first book, Chick, won the Michael Murphy Memorial Prize, and she lectures in creative writing at Brunel University. Her third collection, The Kids, our autumn choice, takes us back to school in inner city London. The classroom becomes a microcosm for the tensions of multicultural England, where lessons still need to be learnt today. All three of these poets have the courage to dig so deep, to quote Kazim Ali, and their message feels more important than ever. So please do take a moment to check out their books on our website, poetrybooks.co.uk, after the reading. Thank you for your support.
Hi, everybody. Let me just adjust. It's really good to be with you from far away. I'm with you from California, West Coast, San Diego. And I wish I was with you in person. I'm going to read from my book, The Voice of Sheila Chandra. It's coming. There it is. The light is making it shine luminescently. But I hope you can see the title. And it's published by Platypus Press, the incredible, amazing Platypus Press. You may know the music of Sheila Chandra, the beautiful, beautiful voice of Sheila Chandra itself in the world. And Sheila doesn't sing anymore. She cannot. And so I was struck by that notion of a singer falling silent and thinking about the way she sang, and in particular the vocal techniques that she used, which included drones and in a form of Indian vocalizing called konakol, in which the singer imitates the sound of percussion. And so I was thinking about the percussive and rhythmic qualities of music, and I wrote this sequence of 40 sonnets that try to explore sound. So I thought I would just read a little bit from this book with you, The Voice of Sheila Chandra. breaks is constant, was like the river, light on the river, riven that remained a rift, an old rill that sounded, she merged with the vibration of the drum, a hum, a home, womb, and she, moaned in the loam, dark earth. Come, Sheila, dame, ocean, dome, this poem, roam to tome, tomb, foam, original fountain that fed my mom, Zamzam, when I was born. Zamzam is the spring in Mecca, at which it is said Ishmael was drank from as a child, as a baby. Who can in syllables like Sheila Chandra moan, us covered in a blanket of sound, this like cloud bank of stars keeping us from eternity, which under the blanket seen like Sanjay, a dancer who I somehow look like, was mistook for 3 times in one day 20 years ago, but the story still resounds. Some woman at a festival saw him perform, swore I was he, I said I wasn't. She did not believe. It's a little sonnet about faith, in fact, because the blanket, it refers to the story of the blanket in Shia Islam. You can look that up to learn. And the story about this man I apparently resemble is a true story. And the woman who didn't believe me when I said I wasn't him is a true story. Me, brass, bowl, soul, swindle through years, no identity theft. I want to move like that, off the axis of the spine into where Sanjay said I am not him. And what does all this have to do with the voice of Sheila Chandra? She, having lost, having now no longer sound, now a constant striking into chaos, that note that flickers through in abstraction, 1 is 1 or 0, and confused, the ear does not focus, neither opens nor closes, always is. I do like saying in poems things that, as if they are true, that are not true in the lived-in world. One can focus with the ear, after all. Long before she lost it, drifts unanchored, wanted to merge, and the body of the singer become the body of the instrument. Talk to the drum, find it, hum, study its vowels. She made her vow to sound, slowly, syllable by syllable. She pronounced words in Uzbek, word unmoored, word pure sound, O river, long had I been long seasons invaded by your current, devoured your tongue of water, those years, time, bent, my one voice spoke. That story of Sheila Chandra at a music festival in Uzbekistan and learning her introductory speech, just saying, I'm glad to be here, we're going to sing a few songs, whatever you say at the beginning. She asked somebody to write it down, translate it and write it down in Uzbek for her to sort of say, and she memorized and spoke to the crowd in Uzbek. And the language as a, I don't know if it's an endangered language or not, but for a singer to come, from England to there and then speak to the crowd in their own native language. So on the tape, when she's speaking, this roar of, the stadium goes mad because she's talking to them in their own language. The beauty of hearing, your tongue. Carried cacophony, world, wheel into the human, one small voice, box, pool, swam, midnight, we went into the sea, expecting our prayers might carry themselves across the silver-slammed surface, would be answered, or do they answer? Pale, cut of prayers, do not answer. Like back into the dark water, what are those stripes of light across the room? A shape that evaporates upon waking, what language cannot hold on to, what you cannot hold on to. How to transcribe what flickers, what is not fixed, that voice, letters made not of ink but of light, not words of fire on stone. How do you transcribe the blank vowel, all the after that aerates, not disappear but settle down through the air? You do not want to say but sing, where might be rain, be sky, come down by snow, but no, you invite it to cover you, the blanket, your coat, a heavy pressure, God, pressure of rain. You want to start the song over, but do not dare to be ready. No tune, no cadence, nothing to pick up, no bridge to cross, now to be small again, break through. There is no beginning to any song, only the place the singer picks up the tune. The line breaks in the poem, they are designed to create more ambiguity, I dare say even create more confusion, and sometimes the images too slip between. So we're talking about traveling across a bridge, but we, just before that, are talking about a song and using musical terms, so one might think of the bridge of a song. So we sort of move in between meanings, actually. What represses, unhomes in the sound, who has made me, what is made me? Is a voice just muscles and shape and breath to phrase a song? Boats assemble at the mouth of the harbor, mouth in earth. You who wrote an ode to silence never wrote of what is silenced. I did. Seek all resounding caves. Let the voice be lit, all the patterns in the new world. We need the language of stone, from string to string, quiver in the opening, the garden so beautiful, dark Lucifer, son of morning, not Eden, but innocence. No expulsion, but after. In the next couple of sonnets that I'll read to you from this little sequence, so I was actually in Cassis at a place called a Camargo Foundation. Cassis is a village in the south of France, somewhat outside Marseille, and the foundation puts up writers and artists at a hotel. I forget the name of the hotel. It might have been called the Paramount. But listen, this is the place at Virginia. Stephen, at the time, and her sister and other siblings stayed when they were in the south of France on their, somewhat famous trip, I guess you would say. So I explore here a little bit the sonnet not as a tidy form, but as a form of anarchy. Dark painting I saw once at SF MoMA, San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. So dark I could not see it. So dark I did not know if it was protruding from the wall or recessed into it. Quiver I did, quake, because dizzy I was. Unknowable surface God, August 2nd, the town is different. I am not in flames. Small boats steer across the harbor. The Cap Canaille governs every view. 16 years since I came. I remember a wide open plaza, a stone staircase down to the sea below, blue, and the town thick with restless voyagers. I die into what comes open. All the windows tie back the curtains. I hope the furious Mistral finds its way in. I am late for dinner. And then here's another about that same. In New York once, I took a friend to a party. He kissed every man in the room, including the waitstaff, the bartender, and the program director of the foundation. I don't know where to say my home is anymore. When someone asks, I say I live out of a suitcase, but not well. Sun sparkling on the water, town signs worn of wildfires, cicadas and boat engines, long hallway from my room to the stairs lined with discarded pieces of furniture, dressers, chairs, and table. I open my window to the sea. The storm, a roar, is a kind of silence. At dinner, someone says, I am staying in Virginia Woolf's room, that furniture was painted by Vanessa Bell. I'll read a couple more pieces from the end of the poem. It's not the end of the poem, actually. I'm barely halfway through, so I hope a little shill. I hope you'll check this book out, The Voice of Sheila Chandra from Platypus Press. Music spent my breath to achieve or invent. Death each chord or cadence out of reach, out of tune. Last time in this town, I promised vow or vowel to turn my back forever on chaos and give myself instead to music, organizing itself in my ear, from chaos a river, made rather than music that makes a shape of endless seconds. I devoted myself to the equation of numbers, between each sound a formula that matches planets and atoms. Music is not an art, but science. I could have remained alive, but I broke. No more will I listen to other than a single note moaned, not known. I do not hear, think again what place presents. Here, a body as battery of the one moment to open your mouth, to plug in. I will allow what I invented to find its color, make a shape which neither water nor sky do. How do you now in this contained shape go through your life, not like a constellation, not guessed at, intuited, or divined? No name, so how do you discern a shape for what is often called God? And perhaps I will close with one single final poem. It's become prescient to me. It was a more, this poem was written in between 2016 and 2020 is when the book came out. And I didn't mean for this poem to be prescient, but I'll read it to you. Vanta Black. Vanta Black is the color, the black that's so dark the eye can't see it. That's what that sculpture was made of at the museum that I couldn't tell what it was. Vanta Black was made for missiles or planes, for defense purposes so dark no eye could see it. Some voices are like that, no one could hear them. It is not good to be lost. To be lost is more than metaphor for spiritual condition. I sit at the terrace overlooking the green sea. Perhaps it is failure that ought to be sought. The voice that fails falls silent. Sheila's or the body's, the blue failed me, the sun fails. Every evening, I, we, you have all failed too. Everyone who strove all these long years for peace failed.
It's wonderful to be here alongside Hannah and Kazim reading tonight for you. Thank you so much to the Poetry Book Society and Durham Book Festival for showcasing our work. I would like to read an excerpt from my long poem, A is for Arabs, that forms the second half of my collection, Auguries of a Minor God. This is a narrative poem that follows a family who have fled from conflict in their homeland and are attempting to build a new life in a foreign country. The poem uses both the Fibonacci sequence and abecedarian form. The section starts about 10 pages into the poem, beginning with the letter L. Listen. You're already starting to forget how to look at the world in a way that makes it stay. Waves lapping the shore, foamy lines leaving glossy lips as wisps of lapis lazuli blue. Like how this unearthly light moves across the water, how your eyes fill with it without warning. You look down at the children's book lying in your lap, the one you have been reading to Maha each night, the one where the little rabbit learns that it is love that finally makes you real. What is real? Asked the rabbit one day when they were lying side by side near the nursery fender before Nana came to tidy the room. Does it mean having things that buzz inside you and a stick-out handle? Real isn't how you are made. It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real. Does it hurt? Asked the rabbit. Sometimes, said the skin horse, for he was always truthful. When you are real, you don't mind being hurt. It doesn't happen all at once, like being wound up, he asked, or bit by bit. It doesn't happen all at once, said the skin horse. You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily, or have sharp edges, or who have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off and your eyes drop out and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you are real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand. Love that makes you visible. Love that makes you whole. Love that will fill these gaping lacunae in your bones, the hollows that have started to haunt you lately, as you have been thinking more and more about what it is like to lose. You have started to compose a list, a little litany of loss, like how people tend to lose socks or house keys, the number of the plumber. This they had made out somewhere for the store. Car keys and headphones and coins and notes, Lego pieces, receipts for things that should be exchanged, glasses and lip balm, that elastic tracksuit bottom which is the only one that really fits anymore. New scarves, gloves, both or more likely just the one. Hats. who lose their trolleys in the brightly lit fluorescent aisles of those obscenely large supermarkets, the ones that won't let you forget how much you detest these artificially lit facilities, how they leave you feeling like you never want to be left languishing in their bowels again. Use wallets, coloured plastic cards, not even counting the many kinds of universal losses. Loss of teeth, for instance. Baby, milk, wisdom, rotten. Like how Maha was on the verge of losing one of her lower left molars. She had been worrying it endlessly, tonguing the rigid underside at a lateral angle out of her gum. You recognized the long festering desire to be rid of it, to let it go. The want was driving her wild. Little losses. Those displaced, misplaced things that are not really lost because they can be found again, and then literal losses. The losses of other things so large they turn all the language in your mouth into a bilious stream of liver-gutted spleen. Like the reek of the carelessly dumped carcasses of those lions abandoned in Baghdad. Like the howl of a dying dog in the dark. Like when you pass a dust-kissed makeshift altar on a long, deserted stretch of highway, its unassuming coordinates, longitude, latitude, looking only vaguely sacred, zip-tied to a lamppost, limp dead balloons, faded party streamers, the laminated photo of someone else's child, reflective surface catching the last of the night. A carefully laid bouquet of long-stemmed flowers shuddering in the seismic wave of lorries thundering by. Like how you have lost track of whether Samir is still alive, if he ever made it off Lesbos, if he made it to shore, face up and upright, face lean with only days-old stubble, not swollen and waterlogged like a puff of fish, please God. Not like that. Lost track of days, months track of time, its slimy black guts lurking heavy in your hands. Lost ancestral olive orchards, appetites, lost words, whole words, no entire languages even so. Like how in your dreams you are mute. Like when you open your mouth inside that lost, blurred world, left in limbo, gasping for air like a dumb sheen fish, no different from when you wake later. No one needs to tell you that all the world is lost to you now. You have lost your mind, head, breath, temper, patience, memories, lost sleep, your religion, lost life, breathing, living people, not just those you liked, but even the ones you loathed, the ones you couldn't stand, you wished them dead. No, they were, and that could likely be on you. Lost laughter, the many-belled ring of her laughter. Lose now, love, your love, she who left you with only salt, ocean, tears, a cruel trick, just a lick of the sea sting in your wounds like a foreign body, like a thing that should not be here or there or left behind, like you were left behind. like you are now, alone, lone wolf, foreign-bodied wolf, gaunt and grey, lingering at the school gate. And one of the kids' friends' mothers, a carefully dressed lady, says, "I have not met your wife yet. How is she? Is she working?" And you feel like someone has thrown you into an iron cage, facing an injured, livid, half-starved predator. The lower half of your limbs and jaw start to tremble. You feel lightheaded. You want to limp into the left half of her body, say, "Hold me." Want to tell her she's dead. That's how. Want to leave and never go back. And just like that, you recall a joke that Jahan told at the table last night. What does the lion say to his family before they leave the den to go hunting? Let us pray. Let us pray. Thank you.
Hi everyone, this is Hannah Lowe. I'm delighted to be reading for the Durham Book Festival. This is my first reading from my new book of poetry, The Kids. Here it is, although by the time this is broadcast it may not be my first, but I'm very happy to be reading from this book, which is a book of sonnets that is sort of orientates around the ideas of how we teach and how we learn. And the opening sequence is about my years as a sixth form teacher in London. I taught when I was about 22 to 32. So these are also kind of poems of history and memory. But I'll begin with the opening poem of the book, which is called The Register. The Register. That first September, I climbed the blue stone steps, past Shakespeare's doubtful face and an old mosaic of Jamaica, and the ruby blot of lips where last year's girls had kissed the schoolhouse brick. Now this year's crop pushed past all clattery chat, their first day back, what's up, salam, the Fugees blaring from someone's phone, ready or not. And with that old white dog still barking softly in my head, I walked the sugar-papered hall and pushed the classroom door to find a sprawl of teenagers sat waiting, my re-sitters, all back to do what they'd already failed. I took my seat and called the register. Denise, Tyrone, Alicia, Chantel. I'll read The Art of Teaching 1. There are 3 of these Art of Teaching poems in the book, which are sort of all intended to be rather self-deprecating. But they're also kind of love poems to my students and to the act of teaching, which is something that I guess I've invested most of my life in and which I've learned enormously from. The Art of Teaching. Number 1. Before I'd learnt the art of teaching wasn't to have all eyes on me, but on each other, to unpick a metaphor or draw a poster, or making sure the chat wasn't about their spots or something on EastEnders. I sat behind my desk and talked like a manic newsreader, while their faces balked in boredom or horror, and one by one glazed over. But nervousness would keep my mouth turned on like a flooding tap, and as I yacked, the vision of Spud in Trainspotting, who loved a dab of speed and talked the ears off anyone who'd listen, would pop to mind, and all the dabs I'd done myself, more dabs than I'd care to mention. Every year I would have to teach English GCSE resit, and I had certain, well-trodden methods of teaching different kind of understanding of literary techniques. And this poem is about the simile, and it has the epigraph from the Charles Causley poem, which I'm sure many of you will be familiar with. Timothy Winters has ears like bombs and teeth like splinters. And I used to get my students to listen to that line and then to draw Timothy Winters up on the board. So we'd often end up with 20 rather ragged and dishevelled faces. And I found that by that road, students could often absorb what simile meant if they hadn't understood it before, or maybe they understood it in a different way. But what I always found in my teaching experience is that it always took me back to my own experiences of learning, whether in formal or informal education. Simile. I can't remember when or which old teacher chalked Charles Causley's words to the board, glued them onto my brain, so whenever I need to remember or explain what simile is, I use that poem. Poor Timothy Winters with his meagre face, though really, all these years, it's Bobby, a girl from school that I've been seeing. Bobby, who'd chase and kiss any boy with her ragged, gaping smile, scuttling the asphalt in her too small skirts and a galaxy of moon-shaped plasters peeling from her neck and shoulders. Nobody liked her. But to think of Bobby nowadays hurts like a fading bruise you keep on poking. Bobby Bonnywell, what happened to her? So, teaching at this time in my life, as I say, sort of in my early to mid-20s, was really when I got turned on to poetry. And it was bizarrely through teaching an anthology of 1,000 years of poems in English that I began to really see the power of poems. And also at the same time I was reading the Blood Axe anthology, Staying Alive. So I was kind of being immersed in the traditional and the contemporary. And this particular anthology was part of a syllabus that I had to deliver. And I suppose it's about my sense of kind of my urgent sense of wanting to communicate what I was getting from these poems to my students. Sonnet for the A-level English Literature and Language Poetry syllabus. All summer term reading poems down in the mud of words, wanting the kids to hear what I heard, breaking the poems apart, slapping their parts to the board. I would love 10 years before the flood. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. Yet dearly I love you and would be loved fain. Batter my heart again, again. So during the time that I worked at this particular place, we moved locations, and it seemed to be a catalyst for a different kind of student joining. Not that in any way all our students were like a homogenous body, but there was definitely a kind of influx of a different type of learner, which presented all kinds of challenges. Because one of the things I found in teaching, having not done an English literature degree myself, was I was only ever one step ahead of the students I was teaching. And sometimes they might have been a couple of steps ahead of me. So I'm sure you at home know that the Restoration diarist Samuel Pepys, his name is pronounced Pepys, although it is not spelt like that. Well, I did not know that at this point in my life. Pepys. The posh girls came and took a corner table, all lip gloss and ribbony hair, each with a fan of starry GCSEs, a summer of youth hostels in Europe behind them, and the future wide open to them like a rainbow parasol, or so I thought. It was Restoration comedies, and I was reading the class an essay, and though I'd seen his name, I'd never heard it. Pepys, I said it, Pepys, over and over, until one girl spoke up. Do you mean Pepys? She said, her voice pulled taut as a noose, as if I was the girl and she the teacher. And what could I have said? I read on, peppies, 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 cool as the trickster, ridiculous as the fool. There was something, a kind of an educational term, retention, that floated around a lot, and it meant, you know, of the students that came to us, like how many did we keep, how many did we retain, and the kind of, I suppose on the flip side of that is those that we didn't keep, we didn't retain for whatever reason, and that's the sort of genesis of this poem. I should say here that although many of the scenarios depicted in these poems did happen, there's a certain degree of fictionalizing going on, and there's definitely a changing of the students' names in order to kind of ensure anonymity, the unretained. What happened in the end to Luke? So clever, so always utterly stoned, he walked like weights were in his trainers until his massive bifters put voices in his head that made him late, then didn't let him out at all. And what about Amal, who slept on strangers' sofas, pyjamas in her rucksack, eating Kit Kats for her breakfast, from Joker in the corner to never answered phone, to mates of mates who may or may have not have seen her? What happened in the end to Benjamin, who went to Feltham, and Martha, 5 months pregnant, quitting for her boyfriend and a flat, my cautions drifting off her like confetti as she strutted through the gates? I'll read one last poem from this sequence, which I suppose takes place after the seven bombings, and what happened the autumn after those bombs was that our students came back. Some of the Muslim students, perhaps more Islamified, if that makes sense as a term, as in more dressing in Islamic style, and definitely a kind of sense of a greater religiosity to some of them. And speaking to those students, some of them told me that it was partly in response to what had taken place that summer, a kind of stop and search of Muslim young men in particular, and also, you know, definitely a rise in Islamophobia, sort of populist Islamophobia, British born. And suddenly, new language, British born. For kids who grew up on terraces in Leeds or tower blocks in Bow, and at weekends tied their bootlaces for football on the lawn, and went to college to study sports or business or car mechanics, and spoke with accents thick as Yorkshire mud or London bullet quick, yes blood and in it, and were as British as a pack of salt and vinegar. And no, his teacher hadn't noticed him withdrawing, and no, his mother hadn't wondered who he called at 2 a.m. in the blue-lit bedroom of their bungalow, despite her scrubbing the words aglow on their garden wall, go home. I'll read a couple of poems from later sections in the book. First of all, I'll read a poem about an old teacher of mine, and, you know, many varied experiences of school and formal education. This one, not so good. Mrs. Vanuka. On the cold stone floor of the art cupboard, she knelt us down, and her pudgy hands, gold garroted, threw down the buckets. Dirty girls, now let's see you spit. The clip clunk of her heels, the door's hard click, and we did. I spat until my mouth was sore and my tongue was fat, while behind the door we heard her chalk and the tick-tock stab of the angry chalk. I'd never known how much my own spit stank. I spat again, until my whole mouth ached, and beside me, Nishat sniffed and sobbed. We couldn't remember which of us first gobbed or what had happened to make us hate each other, and the base of those buckets still barely covered. I'll finish with a poem about a man who taught me when I was 16, the most inspirational English teacher who, after my very sort of quite stuffy and conservative secondary school, really ignited my love for literature by the curriculum that he taught, which was pretty radical at the time, but also the way he taught. The book is dedicated to him, John Toulon, and I'll read the poem Pink Hummingbird. The postcard he sent to you that long, wet summer had on one side a pale pink hummingbird, and overleaf his notes on your essay on Faulkner in his usual turquoise ink. The words you imagined written in sunlight on the bed of his book-stuffed flat, each weighed with care like a love letter, though it was you who wanted him. All summer you waited for September to be back again in the tattered classroom, the tables pushed together and him at the top like a doting father or a bridegroom, or like God, if God wore Doc Martens shoes and a silver sleeper in one ear. Not the God you didn't believe in, but one who believed in you. Thank you.